Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where OP's sister feels entitled to her parents' Lakehouse. My Karen sister refuses to pay fair rent for my parents' Lakehouse. My parents have a small, 630 square foot cottage on a tiny lake in our town. It's across the street from the lake, and the community is very much what you would consider lake life. My sister, who's 35, and I, 37 female, were born there, and we lived there until we were 4 and 5 years old. Although we didn't have much, being by the lake allowed us to have the best childhood ever. When we moved, my parents continued to rent the home. My parents are now getting older and trying to decide what to do with the property. My dad has expressed he would like my sister and I to benefit from this in some way. He's charging the present tenant very low rent for the value of the home. My dad said that he's barely even breaking even. My sister has been living with my parents in their current home and needs to move out as she's crowding them and they're crowding her, etc. The plan is for my parents to put the home in their will, my sister and I split the property eventually 50-50, evict the current tenant, we have other reasons for this also, and my sister rents the property for my parents for now. The house does need some work, so ideally, the only way my parents can be above breaking even and the house will become an investment and a positive asset is if the rent is charged appropriately according to the area and the property value. That rental income could be used for home repairs, etc. My sister does not agree with this and wants her rent comparable to the current tenant. However, for my parents' sake and the future investment of this property, that will only hurt all of us in the long run and will only benefit her. I have to be the bad guy in the family meeting. My sister and I have a great relationship, but I do not want to allow her to do this to our family so that she can have cheaper rent. Not the jerk. Sounds like the current tenant is taking advantage of your mom and dad's goodwill. If the property were going solely to your sister while you receive a lump sum, then what she pays now would be irrelevant. However, ownership split 50-50, you're correct in that your sister needs to pay appropriate rent for upkeep of the property. You're crazy. Are you telling me that if you were renting and it was cheap, you'd insist on paying more to the landlord? It's up to the landlord to raise rent. Ridiculous to blame the tenant, especially in a property needing repair. Right? The tenant is not taking advantage of them. They're paying the rent charged by the landlord. You're absurd to paint the tenant as getting a free ride when the price of rent is entirely up to the landlord. You're ridiculous. OP. Yes, it was up to my father to raise the rent, which is the very issue that I'm discussing regarding my sister, by the way. And perhaps if you knew the tenant, you would think otherwise. You definitely don't have all the facts, and for the sake of this being a long post, I didn't include that part of the conversation. But if you must know, the tenant is a contractor who had a verbal deal with my father that his rent would be cheaper if he provided repairs to the house. However, he hasn't done anything, so he's making out like a bandit with the rent that he's paying. I'm going with you're the jerk. First and foremost, it's your parents' property, and it's up to them what they charge for rent. Second, you're thinking of the future profits you will gain from this house, so you want it renovated. But what are you putting towards the cost of that? You're happy to have your sister bear the cost by herself, and you get 50% free and clear. You're the jerk. This isn't your decision, period. It's your parents' home and their money. OP. Have you not read the entire post? They asked to sit down collectively because they want our opinion and will be leaving the house to us. I believe it's important for us to have these discussions, especially if my father asks. You gave them your opinion. Now it's time to shut up and let them decide. OP. Cool. I haven't even said my opinion yet. We got together last night to discuss options. Then my dad said, let's go our separate ways and digest what we've discussed. When I got home last night, I thought about what would happen if her rent is too low and how that impacts my parents now and how it impacts us in the future. So I haven't even had the chance to tell them until we all meet again tomorrow. Don't tell me to shut up. You're so argumentative and whiny. If you're so firm on being right, then get on already. For real, OP is awful. Truly hard to believe she's 37 years old. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please share your thoughts. I've got a solution for you. Evict the current tenant and rent it out to someone else who will pay fair market value, but not your daughter. Renting a property to your own family members is never the way to go. I ruined my parents' relationship over reading mail. I, 24 female, don't want to say what I do for work, but let's just say it's the type of job that includes a lot of written letters from clients that are supposed to be confidential and only for my eyes. I'm fresh out of college and living with my parents, so I can finish paying off for school. My work letters, of course, go to my parents' address since they live miles away from a post office and driving to a P.O. box is a huge pain. The issue started with my father. Ever since high school, when I received mail, my dad would open it. Whenever I received Christmas or birthday cards in the mail with money in them, my dad would hand me the card and insist he'll keep the money safe for me until I demanded he hand it over. Any package I would order for myself, he would open and hand to me. Sometimes the products were used by him as well. The final straw was when he received my acceptance letter to my dream college, and instead of waiting for me to come home to open it, he opened it himself and called me while I was at work to congratulate me. I've spoken to my mother about how much this makes me feel uncomfortable, and she told me she'd speak to my father about it, to which he would apologize and not do it for a week before doing it again the next week. I had also spoken to my dad about the confidentiality of the mail I would be receiving now that I'm working, and he says that he understands, but it all came crashing down a few weeks ago. While I was working, my dad came into my room and handed me open envelopes from my clients and even tried to have a conversation about it with me, but I just ignored him until he got the hint and left. After work, I yelled at him for violating client confidentiality, to which he got defensive and said that I live in his house and any mail sent to his house would be read by him. Furious, that next week I thought I would take revenge on my father by going to the mailbox and reading his mail. But what I found was what ended my relationship with him. I had found credit card statements on jewelry and restaurants that were too fancy for Dad to go alone, and I don't remember the last time my dad took my mom on a date nor bought her any jewelry. I also found a letter addressed to my dad from a woman who stated how tired she was from hiding their relationship for so long and how she's so desperate for his letters to reach her. When my dad noticed the mailbox was empty, he ran back in the house as white as a ghost. He walked into the kitchen to see me and my mom in the kitchen reading his mail. Before the fighting could start, my mom asked me to leave the house, so I drove to my aunt's, who lives 45 minutes away, and I explained everything. I came back after 2 days when my dad's stuff was gone. My mom told me my dad's living in a hotel and she will be in contact with a divorce attorney. Turns out, my dad had been having an affair with a family friend and they were hiding it through letters, leaving no digital footprint. My dad ended up showing my mom the stash of letters he had, and she took photos of each and every single letter before she asked him to leave. I feel at fault because at first I just wanted to be petty with my dad, but it unraveled into this huge event and made me think, oh, no wonder he's been looking through all my stuff. He was giving himself away. I feel like I shattered my mom's world since I can hear her cry every night about it since the incident. Update. I'll answer a few questions here, then I'll give an update. 1. Was my dad using my money from the gifts to buy stuff for his mistress? I'm 50-50 on this answer. I received cards when I was young with money, and it was the same routine. Aunts and uncles would leave $100 per card, and my dad always gave them to me when I was younger. As I got older, obviously the money reduced to 20 to 40. I do believe my dad would give me back half the money in those cards, which would make sense as to how he was able to make such huge expenses on his mistress. I need to collect proper evidence, so I plan on calling my aunts and uncles and other relatives who would send me money. 2. The mistress would send letters addressed as a business or a credit card company. When my mom would check the mail, she would see the letters that were addressed to my dad as bills or some crazy BS and never open them because she doesn't handle the bills. A lot of packages were sent by the mistress as well, which is why he went through my packages, and I don't want to imagine what kind of crap she was mailing him. Now for the update. Like I said before, it's been a few weeks since this happened. I've been doing my best to comfort my mother while she deals with all of the legal business and my dad's constant appeals to my mom to apologize and beg for forgiveness. I've been here to listen to her, and she keeps spiraling between wanting to forgive him and then being upset. I tell her my own personal opinion, which was to never take back a cheater. She did basically everything for him, and she shouldn't see it as her not being enough for him. That's his fault for not appreciating her. The mistress also was a married woman. My mom reached out to her husband, sending him the letters she had taken photos of, even had a long phone call with him about what was going on. He initiated the divorce, and the mistress is now angry at my father for not being more careful. The mistress' ex-husband, who I'll call Henry, has been a best friend of my mom's throughout the legal cases. I hear the mistress is still reaching out to forgive him, which I honestly think is pretty funny since my dad is doing the same thing. She was financially dependent on Henry, and my dad isn't making enough at his job to support the lifestyle she wants. Yesterday, Henry asked my mom to come out to lunch with him. They've been sad shut-ins for the past few days, and they agreed to go and get some fresh air. I encouraged my mom to do such and to call me if my dad or the mistress decided to show their face when they went, just so I could come pick her up. My dad hasn't apologized to me at all for reading my mail. In fact, he's called me and left me voicemails telling me that this whole situation was my fault, then going and crying, saying he regrets everything and he hopes he can still be my dad. I honestly don't know what to do with him right now, other than just ignore him. Am I the jerk for refusing to host any more family get-togethers at our house because of my in-laws' poor manners? My husband and I finally bought our first house, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a year ago. Over the holidays, we thought we'd take on the role of hosting a few get-togethers. From my perspective, it was horrible. I hated every second of it. I never really hosted anything or entertained or whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's just that I'm not used to the requirements, but growing up, my mom or dad would host family and they were nothing like this. My in-laws did things like let the kids run around screaming and yelling, up and down stairs, touching things that don't belong to them, making messes and not making them clean up after themselves. Parents didn't bring anything for the kids to do and they got upset with us for not having anything for them. Brought a dog into our house and let the dog on our furniture. Left chairs sticking out of tables instead of pushing them in. Stomped around the house with their shoes on despite being asked to remove them. Left trash and paper towels, etc. sitting around or balled up instead of throwing them away. Opened multiple bottles and cans of drinks and only took a sip and left it open. Pulled out and used new rolls of toilet paper when there were still plenty left on the rolls. They opened our cabinets. Only one person asked if we needed help at any point, and it was my husband's brother's new girlfriend who we were all meeting for the first time. She offered to help us clean up, bring out food, etc. This was a terrible experience. My husband was shocked at his family's behavior and didn't know what to say. I don't blame him for this at all. He was just a part of the hosting as me, but he was seeing his family through new eyes as well. When he talked to his mom and dad after, they just laughed at us and said, "That's what hosting is." So we decided together that we would rather not go through all that again. Easter's coming up, and my in-laws asked what our plans are. My husband said that we aren't going to host after everyone's awful manners. His mom and dad are upset with us. We have the big house, so they figured it would be on us from now on. We said that the only way we would even consider hosting is if every member of his family pitched in some way. They said that defeats the purpose of someone else hosting and that no one should be expected to pitch in if we offer to host. So we said that we won't host. Maybe I'm just not meant to host, but are we truly so far out of bounds to refuse to host anymore because of how his family behaves? Not the jerk. Your house, your rules. And if people are ignoring those rules, then I think it's fair not to host. I think it's valid to not want to host for any reason, but your list is wild to me. Going through your medicine cabinet is a huge one. I'd be worried about a hidden addict in the family. That's who does that. Some of them are easily mitigated. Pets on the furniture? Clarify no pets if you ever host again. But what really gets me is the shoe thing. It's super common in a lot of cultures not to wear shoes in the house. It's something you should expect and respect when going to someone else's house. It's such a baseline boundary that to disregard it is absurd. What are you getting out of it to ignore that rule? A petty sense of control? I could deal with the chairs and even the messes, but if people went out of their way to spite the house rules for absolutely no reason, I wouldn't invite them back either. If they can't respect something as basic as no shoes, they don't have an iota of respect for you or your husband. Am I the jerk for letting my wife's friend quit, causing her to lose multiple benefits totaling in over $50,000? I, 35 male, worked with my wife's close friend Sarah, who's 29, who she's known since college. They were sorority sisters back then. Sarah and I were in the same industry, and she eventually applied for a position at the same company that I currently worked at. She got the job almost 3 years ago, and we've been at the same Midwestern office. She was a part of my team, but I dealt very little with her directly and wasn't her direct report. Sarah has done very well and was promoted within 6 months to a good position. She seemed to be on a fast track, but recently stumbled in her latest interview for a sought-after position. We gave the position to a more deserving candidate in my eyes. As we sometimes see, Sarah was upset, and it was the start of her leaving the company. I could sense she was applying elsewhere and did put in a 2 weeks notice. Offered to stay on 1 month in line with her project's deadline, which we accepted. We wanted to keep Sarah, but I could not give her a raise because she was already at the top of her pay scale. Her job offer was actually lower pay, so there was no leverage there either. I told her this within a few days, and Sarah was pretty upset. She decided to leave immediately. Here's where the issue comes up. Sarah was aggressive with her 401k and the company stock options by my recommendation. We have a 10% 401k match, very generous, and stock buying options, max stock purchases, basically a 2 for the price of 1 deal. She would tell me later she maxed out the 401k and stock options every year. The problem is, my company has a 3-year vesting schedule before the matching is permanent. So if an employee leaves before then, both 401k and stock matching is gone. Sarah's 3-year anniversary was within the 1-month notice date, but not when she abruptly quit. It's something I realized between Sarah's notice and her quitting. I wasn't able to advise her of this, nor did I know how much she put into this program. There was really nothing I could do when she abruptly quit. It was about 2 months later, Sarah came over with my wife and laid into me. She tried transferring her funds and found out about the vesting period and asked if I knew. She revealed the amount she would be losing during the transfer of funds, and it was greater than $50,000. Both Sarah and my wife have said I'm the jerk for not warning her. I told her the situation and how I did not consider her quitting immediately, in front of others too. So, am I the jerk for not warning Sarah that she was just short of the 3-year vesting period that would have saved her $50,000? No. It was her 401k and up to her to know the details. Most companies have a vesting period, and it's usually nothing that is hidden. You were not her supervisor, nor in human resource position to advise her. Had you thought of it, her 1-month notice would have covered her vesting. But she left early and burned that bridge. She will be angry because it's easier to blame you than admit that she didn't check on it herself. But your wife should not be part of it. Not the jerk. You're not Sarah's boss. You're not HR. You're not her financial advisor. You're not her daddy. Sarah made an impulsive decision on her own without looking into things. And now she's trying to blame you for her actions. Tell her to take responsibility like an adult and leave you out of her personal business. Am I the jerk for uninviting my mom to my wedding after she called my fiancé embarrassing? I'm engaged to Tiffany, and I love her with all my heart. Unfortunately, my mom has never seemed supportive of our relationship, and it's pretty clear to me she doesn't enjoy Tiffany. This has been a huge point of contention between my mother and I've made it clear that she needs to begin making an effort if she wants to be in our lives. She continues to try to get away with excluding her, so I've had to come down hard with boundaries. Recently, my mom was going to a touring production of a Broadway show that Tiffany has been dying to see, but was unable to get tickets to. My mom was going with her sister, who woke up with a fever and chills, so she was going to invite her secretary as her friends happened to be out of town. I told my mom it was ridiculous that Tiffany wasn't even her 4th choice. I explained this was deeply hurtful and asked her to consider her future daughter-in-law over her assistant. She ended up letting Tiffany go, but when it was time to go, I saw my mom's face change. Tiffany is a huge girly girl and just loves to dress up, which unfortunately she doesn't get many chances to do at the moment. She went all out for the show in a floor-length, sparkly number with her hair done up and beautiful makeup. My mom was wearing flare leggings, a sweater, and Converse, and didn't even try to hide her disgust. She asked if Tiffany was aware that no one dressed up for the Performing Arts Center. Tiffany admitted she might have gone a little overboard, but explained she just loves to dress up. My mom complained that she was going to feel embarrassed. I told her to stop, and they went on their way. Well, it has recently come to my attention that my mom texted my aunt, including pictures of Tiffany taken without her knowledge, and complained about how embarrassed she was. She said everyone was looking at them, and some people were snickering. My aunt was making jokes back, and I became furious. I demanded my mom explain to me, and she said I was being ridiculous. She said she could talk to her sister about whatever she wanted, and we needed to grow up. She blamed me for pushing Tiffany on her in the first place and claimed it was super embarrassing, and everyone was giving Tiffany weird looks. I lost it and told her she was uninvited from our wedding if that's what she really thinks. She got really quiet and said, "Okay, if that's what you really want," and said I was unwilling to compromise or make things work. Now the rest of the family's calling me a jerk and saying I will regret not having my mom at my wedding. But Tiffany feels very happy and supported. Never in a million years did I think I would side with the mother-in-law over the wife in a story like this. But you're the jerk. Your mom is not obligated to invite your wife to things, especially one-on-one things. Your wife wasn't being excluded from a family event, and forcing your mom to give her extra ticket to someone she doesn't get along with is wrong. I love to dress up as much as the next person, but a floor-length gown is way too much, especially when your mom didn't want to invite her in the first place. Everyone sucks here except for Tiffany. You forced your mom to take your fiance with her, knowing your mom doesn't like her and would likely be rude to her the whole evening. And when your mom started being rude before even leaving, you didn't think, oh, this may be a bad idea. Your mom is obviously a jerk, but you set up this situation and really shouldn't be surprised she acted like a kid. Tiffany sucks too for dressing inappropriately for the event. Dressing up for theater is common. Do I think Tiffany went overboard? Yes. But, and I say this as someone with over 2 decades of experience in theater, I can guarantee nobody at the show was paying attention to Tiffany the way mother-in-law's making it out, and she was in no way dressed inappropriately. Now, given that we're not talking about visiting the Opera House or actual Broadway and just some performing arts center, more casual is definitely the norm. But in general, people typically wear nice clothes to the theater, not yoga pants. But more importantly, without an explicit dress code, they're both allowed to wear whatever they want. OP sucks for trying to force the relationship. Mother-in-law sucks for being a bully. But if Tiffany wants to dress up in a sparkly dress to go to the theater, more power to her. You sure nobody was laughing at her and making comments about her? Everyone's dressed up pretty casually, then you got Cinderella waltzing in. Today I messed up by getting banned from McDonald's. For the past few months, I'd been taking advantage of a promotional deal through a McDonald's app where one can snag their breakfast sandwich for a mere $1.50, a significant markdown from its usual price of $4.89. A steal, right? These deals, as many of you might know, are often used as loss leaders by companies to draw customers in, with the hope that they'll purchase additional items at regular prices. However, my transactions with McDonald's were purely transactional. I was there for the deal and nothing else. My order history was a monotonous stream of $1.50 breakfast sandwiches and nothing more. To me, it was a way of maximizing value from a company that surely wouldn't miss a few dollars here and there, especially given their billion-dollar revenue. But it seemed my frugal tactics caught the eye of the McDonald's account review team. This morning, as I attempted to log in and claim my daily dose of discounted breakfast, I was met with a message that struck me as both absurd and slightly flattering. My account had been banned for misusing their promotional deals. At first, I thought it was a mistake. How could taking advantage of a deal they offered be considered misuse? It's not as if I'd hacked the system or used illicit means to claim the offer. It was there, in the app, available for anyone to use. Yet here I am, cast out from the Golden Arch's digital embrace, all because I relished their deal a bit too enthusiastically. What puzzles me is the precedent this sets. Where do we draw the line between making the most of this offer and misusing it? Should there not be an expectation that customers will in fact use it? And if that usage is deemed too frequent, does that not reflect a flaw in the promotional strategy rather than the customer misconduct? Just make a new email. Boom, new account. That's how I expected this post to end. Even then, aren't they still making profit on a $1.50 breakfast sandwich? I used to love McDonald's, but inflation has just made it I don't like them at all anymore. I got 2 McChickens and 1 large fry the other day. That was it, and my total was over $10. It's not worth it, dude. My Karen mother-in-law demands I eat her horrible cooking. I gave her a piece of my mind. My husband, who's 23, and I'm 21. We come from different cultures. For example, I'm an immigrant and I moved to America when I was just 12 years old. There are many things my husband and his family do differently than mine, things that I'm not quite accustomed to. One of them is how they prepare and season their food. To me, it's super bland, and the food combinations they choose don't seem to go together. For example, my mother-in-law puts mayo in literally everything. I've even seen her making a tortilla pizza with mayo as her base, which she offered to me. Each time she offers me food, I make up some kind of an excuse to avoid eating it, and I try to be as polite as possible about it. Unfortunately, after I invited her to dinner, she felt compelled to do the same for me, even when I told her it was not necessary. The next day, after the dinner we had together, she started making plans with my husband. When my husband brought it up to me, I told him I really didn't want to go, to which he replied, "My mom's food isn't that bad. Can't you just please deal with it for one day?" In most cases, I would have just sucked it up to maintain a good relationship with my mother-in-law, but I'm pregnant in my first trimester and I'm feeling extra nauseous. I honestly don't think I'd be able to keep the food down in the condition I'm in. My husband grew up eating her food, which is maybe why he doesn't think it's that bad. I mean, even my family thinks so. When my mom invited her over for a family get-together, she brought some pasta, which sauce tasted like a whole package of ketchup was dumped in it. I ended up venting to my sisters and mom about the issue, and they all gave me the advice to just be honest. My mom even said that if I don't be honest now, it's something I'll have to deal with for the rest of my life. So I decided to call her and express to her that I'm not accustomed to eating these types of foods that she's used to making, and since I'm pregnant, it'll be really hard for me to swallow the food because of my nausea. I even offered to teach her some recipes from my homeland that she seemed to really enjoy. It didn't go well. She was really offended and told me that she'll never cook for my ungrateful self again, and told my husband. My husband is really disappointed in me because he felt like I should have just pretended to keep the peace, and he's upset that now my mother-in-law doesn't even want to invite me over again. I feel super bad now, and seriously, I want to know if I'm the jerk in this situation, or if I was being too mean or disrespectful. Update. I invited my mother-in-law out to a tea cafe and I spoke to her in person. I was able to explain myself better and chose not to back down on me not liking the types of foods that she cooks. This is my life, and I'm choosing not to live the rest of my future being pressured into eating foods that I don't like, and I'm also choosing to live my relationship based on honesty. I had an honest discussion with my mother-in-law and explained to her that I love her as a person and appreciate the time and effort she puts into making my husband and I food, but I honestly do not like the type of foods that she chooses to make. I explained to her that it doesn't make her any less of a person or a bad cook, it's just my personal preference. She took it extremely well this time and apologized for insulting me. She told me that she has never been the best cook and would love to take me up on my offer to teach her some meals from my homeland. I ended up suggesting that we take cooking classes together, and she loved the idea. I think the little bump in the road gave us a stronger bond, and I'm glad that we were able to patch things up. I personally don't think the advice that I was getting from the majority of this sub was good advice, and I would recommend to anyone in my situation to be honest and kind. I even made it known to my mother-in-law that I would appreciate the same kind of honesty coming from her, and if she ever disliked food I made or even a gift that I gave, to please let me know so I can make or get something that she'd enjoy. She even made jokes about previous gifts that I had got her. I mean, you called her up to tell her that you don't like her food? You wouldn't be offended if she did the same thing to you? If she was like, the food you make is really unfamiliar and I honestly can't stomach it at all, wouldn't you be offended too? I would be. Soft, you're the jerk. No, you don't need to eat her food. You don't have to like her food. But calling her up to tell her how you literally cannot imagine trying to choke down her food is pretty rude. You're the jerk. Seriously, you're the jerk here. Pregnancy was the perfect excuse to say you just couldn't eat the food because your sense of smell and taste is being weird, rather than insulting her cooking. You're the jerk. You don't call someone up and tell them that you don't like the food that they cook for you. You just don't. If you're pregnant, you can say you're nauseous the night of the dinner and just eat very little, but it's just basic manners when you're being hosted to pretend the food is good. Yes, you might have to deal with this the rest of your life. Who cares? Occasional meals you don't like are not the end of the world. I created a tech support help desk for my family since they always need my help with technology. I'm female, 24 years old. I'm studying computer science and I'm currently doing an internship at a medium-sized company that hasn't laid off 30% of its employees yet. So, since I'm the one who knows about computers, my family sees me as their personal tech support, and my family is big. I live with my mom, my little brother, 2 of my aunts, and their kids. The kids are lazy when it comes to tech because they know that I'll do it for them. But my mom and aunts are beyond tech illiterate. They're tech morons. I'm constantly interrupted during my studies or my work because my cousins forgot their Disney Plus profile pin, or my mom needs to reset her email password again. I actually set up a cloud password manager for them that they do not use because they always forget that it's an option. So a few weeks ago, one of my little cousins wanted me to help him reset a password after he got locked out of Google, and he aggressively knocked on my door, demanding that I help him. I asked him, "Do I look like tech support to you?" And he said yes, with a straight face. So I got a domain and set up a help desk. Then I told my family that if they wanted any help from me, they should go to the website and submit a ticket for my help. My aunt said that I was being ridiculous, but I was dead serious. In the following days, I would give them the cold shoulder if they tried to come to me with tech problems, and just tell them to submit a ticket and I would send them the solution by mail. Forgot your mail password? Too bad, use someone else's mail. Fortnite is lagging? Get a ticket and wait till I'm home. That helped me a lot. But then yesterday I came back from the university and the whole house was sitting in the living room telling me to sit down. They were doing an intervention on me. They said I was rude, cold, condescending, and unhelpful. My mom said she's tolerated my manly ways, no idea where that comes from, because I'm helpful with technology. But now they won't stand up to my disrespect and I'm treating them like kids. I said no, I'm treating them like customers. The discussion got heated and turned into a screaming match. I said I would move in with my ex-stepfather because he doesn't ask me to do stuff. I'm still with my family, but I feel like everyone hates me now. But my ex-father says I'm right to be annoyed by them. Am I the jerk? Okay, this is brilliant. If it was once or twice in a while, I'd say you're a jerk. This consistently with no respect for your time? Not only not the jerk, but genius. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.